Hello, and welcome to Energy Secrets for Conscious Leaders. Today, my guest is Jeffrey Van Dyke. Jeffrey is the founder of The Courageous Messenger, which helps trailblazers, visionaries, and changemakers bring their paradigm-shifting work to the world. Jeffrey's known for helping his clients connect to their higher guidance to understand their larger mission and the why behind their work. His pioneering work with core wounds helps leaders strategically use their life's biggest challenges to create more effective, engaging messaging and marketing that connects deeply with their audience. Jeffrey was a two-time president of the International Coach Federation chapter in San Francisco. His global work has included co-founding True Purpose Israel and working with business and political leaders in Colombia to heal the wounds of the country. While at Microsoft, Jeffrey designs speaker training systems working directly with global leaders such as Peter Jennings, Bill Gates, former French President Jacques Chirac, and former Prime Minister of Israel, Ariel Sharon. Welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you so much. It's a delight to be here.
Great. And we've talked, while preparing for this meeting, we talked about, the energy side of leaders' work. And we got into the definition of course, energy and power. We could say, or to a certain extent, synonymous. And I've always loved your definition of holy power. So I'd love to talk with you more around conscious leadership and power. And so perhaps you'd like to start out talking about, some of the people that you work with and your work with them around that topic.
Yeah, thank you. To me, the power conversation for conscious leaders is a huge one, because in all the years I've been doing what I do, one of the things I consistently see is some version of, I need power to do good in the world, but power is bad. And even if my conscious mind goes, oh no, that's not true. Power is just pure energy and blah, blah, blah. In our bodies, in our wounding, there's still places where like, I don't trust it, right? So let me start here. I find that around utilization of power, there's kind of two camps I see, and this especially relates to energy management.
Yeah.
One camp are people who have some part of them that's still really raw, really tender, that they keep under wraps and safely protected and hidden away. And that part of them is just off limits to them as well as everybody else. And I've got a client right now that fits in this camp, and she's very successful out in the world in her career and whatnot. So it's not, like, oh, I'm walking around so deeply wounded that I can't function in society. That's not it at all.
Yeah.
It's, I'm functioning in society, but every single day underneath the surface of my life, I have to manage this part of me and make sure nobody gets it. Because if they do, it can crush me. And I think of it like a, when you've got a operating system on your computer and you've got some program running in the background and it's taking all the system resources from your computer, but you don't even know it's running, right? Because I can tell you this particular person I'm talking about, she didn't come to me with this as her stated problem. That wasn't the issue in her mind, right? She didn't even recognize it until we went in and found it. And she's like, holy cow, yeah. And the resistance came up and she didn't want to see it. She didn't want me to see it. But every day, the amount of energy that it takes to manage that is substantial. So that's one side of the energy piece. Now I'm going to talk about the other side, and this is more, I think, what we think about power. I find that, especially for people who've done a fair amount of work on themselves, a fair amount of healing and growth and whatnot, like, okay, I get that side.
Mhm.
But the other side is there is a part of me that is so powerful, that's tapped into the power of the whole universe. Uh, there's a part of me that when I touch it, like it's like a supernova. Um, Now, every day when I'm walking around being my personality self, am I necessarily in touch with it? Not so much. Am I utilizing this power in my life and in my leadership? Maybe not so much there either.
Mm.
Uh, and the reason is I don't trust myself with it. I don't trust that if I really let this power out, that my life as I know it wouldn't get obliterated, one. And two, I also don't trust that if I let this power out, I wouldn't damage or harm others in my world. And so there's the energy management of trying to keep that power kind of locked up, sequestered, tucked away from my own consciousness and from others.
Yep.
So let me give you an example of that from my own life.
Yeah.
Uh, when I started in this career, one of my biggest concerns, and I didn't say this publicly, but I did say it to my mentor and spiritual teacher and to my best friend, which was I'm scared that if I really go all in for my life's work, that it's going to blow up. It's going to get big. And I'm scared that I'm going to get a bloated ego along with it. I'm scared that it's all going to go to my head and I'm going to be this guy who's all caught up in his own fame. And my heart's going to be closed and I'll be at the top of the mountain all alone. And then at some point, probably the mountain will crumble and I'll be down in the rubble all alone. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's that ambition part where it's like, is it clean ambition that I can trust, or is ambition driven by my wounding? And that
Yes.
place, right? One of the things I always say is whenever you 10x your success, you 10x your mess.
I
Wherever the
like that.
wobble is, right? Wherever there's a wobble, like, I don't have that part of myself handled. What's true is my life still kind of works at the level of influence I have right now. At kind of the size of my life, I can get by with not having that part of my life addressed. Maybe it's what's going on in your marriage. Maybe it's your finances. Maybe it's your eating habits and your health. But there's some arena of life. Maybe it's, oh, I'm trying to be somebody that was mine, right? That like, oh, if this thing ramped up, if my whole life ramped up, this part of my life will ramp up too. And if it does, it's going to have really detrimental impact on my life, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I find so many leaders are subconsciously managing. And when especially conscious leaders are saying, why aren't I having more influence? That's one of the first places I look is, okay, what are you scared would go wrong in your life if you did? Because we have really good self-preservation mechanisms in our psyche. And on some fundamental level, we know my life won't work at that level if this isn't handled.
Mm. Mm. So, yeah, so just to summarize a bit what you're saying, so you're talking about the bit about it won't work. That's the fear that I can't handle the power, or my ego is going to distort it in some way.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I just want to pick back up on was something you said like a minute or so back when you were talking about the connection to, you know, the bigger powers. It sounded more like you were speaking of the cosmic level, because one of the things that I found so helpful in well, actually from spiritual practices and redefining power through that was, you know, power not being about having power, but about being power, or being in alignment with the flow of power, which is more the cosmic thing. And that And that takes, that's not something that's so easy to do, because that does take some spiritual work with regard to the dissolution of the ego. And that sort of, being able to, of course, we don't get rid of the ego and we need it, but there's something about, that tightness of the wounded ego that protects these places that you're talking about that we need to dissolve.
I love the frame of the language you just used, which is having power or being power. I'm going to have to borrow that. That's
You're
really
welcome.
good, because that's really what it is. You mentioned holy power. So a number of years ago, my guidance kept telling me, Jeffrey, you're here to help leaders have holy power, to make power holy. And at some point I just stopped and I'm like, okay, gang, what the heck is holy power? What does that mean? And immediately the answer came through. Holy power is the complete expression of divine truth in real time, without hesitation, manipulation, or control. The complete expression of divine truth in real time, without hesitation, manipulation, or control. And if you think about it, it's like that divine impulse, whether you call it, oh, I'm getting this message to do this thing, or if it's just something your body knows, I'm meant to go in this direction. However that's occurring, that you follow it in real time, right? Without hesitation, without manipulation, without control. Because oftentimes what I find for people, when they are conscious leaders who have spiritual guidance that's leading them in their life and in their career, we often find ourselves in hesitation, manipulation, control. Hesitation meaning, can I say this? Can I do this? How is it going to be received? Am I going to be okay? All of those considerations, right? Hesitation, manipulation, which is, I'm called to say this thing this way, and that's the sharp sword of truth. But I'm scared of the impact of having a sharp sword of truth, so I'm going to dull it. I'm going to say it this other way instead. I'm going to change my language so that people don't get their feathers ruffled or whatever it may be, right? That's one version of manipulation. I'm not expressing that divine truth in real time as I'm receiving it. Or control, which is, no, I'm getting this guidance to do this thing, and I'm saying, no, I don't want it. And I'm going to do it this other way instead, because I have some trip I'm on about that, right? Which is different from I'm being forced to. That's not what I'm talking about. It really is that I'm trying to control everything so that I feel that deep sense of safety, which of course is elusive when it comes to the ego.
Absolutely. And these things, they're just so common, aren't they? Almost ubiquitous almost. I mean, I recognize all of those three things in myself, that I go down those tracks. And we've all been brought up in a culture where we haven't had a lot of endorsement to follow guidance. I mean, yes, prayer and etc. But in general, particularly in business, it's been about using our heads. If we go a couple of decades back, particularly, I know it's becoming more and more popular, particularly like in the the coaching and the personal development fields, for people to sort of talk about channeling and things like that. But then ego can get involved in that if that's part of your, I am channeling, and you're selling that because you're a channel.
Right. Or the other thing I find oftentimes for folks I work with is kind of an on again, off again dance with it, which is, when I feel lost and I'm looking for direction, eventually I'll surrender and I'll listen to guidance and I'll get the big directive, right? Oh, I just heard what I meant to do next. Oh my gosh, I'm so right. Oh, finally the clarity came. But then on a given Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, when you're at work, moving things along, and you're trying to make the business go, you don't stay connected to the guidance for kind of turn by turn instructions.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, for example, like one of my practices with copywriting, when I send an email out, when I'm doing my practices, right, I will tune into my guidance and ask certain questions before I write it. Who is this really for? Like, I know I've already identified what the program is or what the offer is or whatnot, But of all those people, who really needs this most? Who is this? Why am I called to bring this to the world, and who's calling it forth? Uh, I may know the logical benefits that I've identified in a program, but I ask, why do they need it really? What's the deeper craving in them that this is meant to connect to,
Mhm.
right? And what I'm doing as I'm asking those questions and hearing the answers is I'm letting my heart be touched. I'm letting my heart open so that I can connect to the hearts of the folks I'm here to touch, here to be in relationship with. Um, that's more that turn by turn, ongoing, don't do this, do that, go here. I know, and sometimes I'll get these messages. Yeah, Jeffrey, you think this program is about X, but what it's really about is boom, boom, boom. And I get a talking to, right? uh, and oh, okay, got it. So that piece where it's like, okay, can I not only use guidance to get kind of the big insights and direction, but can I use it moment by moment, day by day, and how I live my life and how I run my business and how I connect with people? Um, one of the things I do, even with corporations, is I help them identify and name the life force that fuels their brand, that fuels their company.
Mhm.
Um, and I teach them to dialogue with the life force itself for wisdom about the company. It's another way to say I teach them how to channel,
Yeah.
right? But it's amazing. Like I have this winery that I worked with, and I said, "Oh, do you think that there's a creative impulse that had this winery be born?" "Oh yeah, absolutely, got it." "Do you believe that this creative impulse that had the company be born has wisdom to it?" "Yes, absolutely." "Ah, do you imagine that if you could talk with that creative impulse and get ongoing wisdom to run the company, that the company would run better?" "Yeah, I think it would." "Okay, cool." Right. So I start with that kind of conversation. For them, they named when we got into what does this impulse want to be called, the name came out, the heart of the vine. And
Oh,
so
wonderful.
they dialogue with HOV, the heart of the vine. And it was so amazing. The owner, a few months after working with the team, he said, "Jeffrey," and he's a spiritually oriented guy, um, probably more so than the folks on his team,
Mhm.
right? They're industry experts in the wine industry. He's the one that's been on more of a spiritual path. And he's like, "It's amazing. We used to have these meetings and we would, have discussions and everybody'd have their opinion and try to get their opinion in. But now when we have a big question on the plate, on the docket, we take a moment and go, oh, let's check in with the heart of the vine." And he's like, "We'll take 3 minutes and have everybody just close their eyes and tune in and connect and ask, we'll pick the question we need to ask." And he's like, "Jeffrey, we all check back in. And it's like we all get the same response, but there's these nuances that make it richer when we're all tuning in." He said, "This is more efficient than we've ever been. Not only is the information better, but we don't spend time arguing about it because we're aligned on the answer just by asking the source." And talk about energy efficiency. You can do that with your own company. You can do that if you're a solopreneur. You can do it if you have a team, but that is incredibly efficient.
It is. And it's such a wonderful example as well that, you know, as human beings, we all have these capacities. There's not a need to identify as being spiritual. You
Mhm.
can guide people in business language to show them how to access these capacities. And given that, I mean, there's always chaos and uncertainty around, but it's high at the moment.
Yeah.
So these tools are really important for leaders as they navigate through periods that are, particularly unstable, where they can't see where maybe their business is going or what to do,
Yeah.
what's needed next.
And, I think it's really important to frame the conversations in language that people can understand, regardless of who your audience is.
Yeah.
Even what you're just saying now, like, if I'm talking to a corporation, I'll say, more uncertainty than ever, check, right? Not sure how to address it on a regular basis, check. Do you believe that your mind alone has the tool and capacity to navigate this with great expertise? And people will kind of, well, right, hem-haw a little bit. And I'll say, when you've had your best ideas, was it because your brain was brilliant, or did an idea pop in kind of out of nowhere? And then you knew what to do. And most people would go, yeah, that. If we could have that happen more often to address the increasing uncertainty, would that be a good thing? Yeah. Okay, great. Let's learn how to do that. Right. So I'll take a frame around a problem and I'll deconstruct how their regular thinking is around it and offer an expanded possibility as a way to introduce another way of approaching it, right? And in terms of power and energy, that's holy power. That's the complete expression of divine truth in real time without hesitation, manipulation, control, even at a corporate team level, right? Being able to call it out. Yeah, the life force of our company, we call it by this name. It goes by this name, and we connect with it on a regular basis, and it guides our business decisions. Amazing. And it's available to all of us all the time, which is kind of spectacular. And, like, holy cow, when people really get it. When I'm working with like thought leader types, I long have had them ask their inner guidance for advice and direction and whatnot for their work. But these days, there's a thing in particular that I'm doing that is just like, and that is, we name the life force at the foundation of their body of work, right? And as an entity, we dialogue with it. All right, this body of work, what do you want from me today? Where do you want me to go? Like, who is this for? Why are you in the world? All the business questions we normally ask, the marketing questions, we ask to the life force of the work itself. It knows where it wants to be in the world. It knows who it wants to serve. My guidance once said to me, Jeffrey, all inspired ideas have a life force to them. And everything connected, required for the full expression of that life force is connected to it. It's not connected to you. It's connected to the life force itself of the idea. And I don't know about you, but in so much of my work, the best stuff is not anything that I feel like I came up with, like in my, brilliance mind came up with this. It came to me and through me, but it's not like my mind alone came up with it. It was like, holy, usually I'm inspired by it. I'm like, wow, that's so good. Like I'm the first one getting my kind of hair blown back by it. And the frame for it is to move from I am the hub of the wheel to I'm a dominant spoke. My clients,
that's a nice image,
right? My clients are spokes. Other collaborators are spokes. The team members that I'm connected with are spokes. Like all the resources I need are connected to the life force itself, not to me. And whenever I'm busy trying to make it happen, I'm draining myself left, right, and center. It's taxing to believe this is my work and my business, and I have to drive it forward. Ugh. But when we go, the life force itself has intelligence and resources. Let me tune into that. Let me dance with it. Let me partner with it and allow all the resources I need, which sometimes are the next idea or the next step. Sometimes it's having the right clients kind of pop into your world out of the blue. And you're like, how did you find me? Right? Sometimes it's having doors opened, invitations. Hey, come speak on this stage. Come share your work here. I just released an album, as you know. And 2 weeks earlier, a leadership group I'm part of, we had a 3-day event. They said, hey, Jeffrey, on day 3, what do you think about leading the first hour with some of your songs and stories? You know? And I was like, how perfect, because it's 2 weeks before this album release concert I'm doing. So I got to get a dry run in front of 80 leaders and have the experience, so that when I did the public release yesterday, like I was like, oh, I know this landscape. It was such a gift. And it's a
Yeah.
gift that I didn't try to manufacture, you know? So like, to me, that's that magical place of being in relationship with and in partnership with life force in this universe, and allowing it to be this co-creative dance versus I think the old school way of relating to your inner guidance is this: I'm going to go to it for information in an extractive kind of way. I'm going to get what I need. I'm going to take it. I'm going to do something with it and drive something forward, versus I'm going to stay in partnership with it the whole time.
Because I think the old school way often is about, trying to control outcomes. And that can be a difficult habit to break. I mean, I know for me, that's certainly been one of my life lessons. You get out of the way and allow, you say, allow that partnership, allow that co-creative partnership with the life force of your work. Is that's something in itself to develop and to watch, the getting out of our own way.
I want to speak to 2 things related to that. Because people often ask me, like, okay, how do you develop your guidance, right? How do you use it? And to me, the first place I want to talk to is about courage. Years ago, when I started coaching, I was in this session with this lady, and it was not seeming to go anywhere. Right? You're going round and round. But I kept seeing in my mind's eye this image of this red dress. And finally, I just blurted. I'm like, I keep seeing this red dress in my mind's eye. Does that mean anything to you? And she's like, oh my God, I had this red dress when I was 12 years old. And the whole thing opened up.
Wow.
And from that point forward, I started practicing blurting. Like, I'm getting something, so I'm going to spit it out and do my best to be unattached to whether or not it lands for people, right? I just spit it out. It's not my job to ensure that it's true with a capital T. That's not my job. That's their job of discernment, is to go, does this land for me? And what about it lands for me? That's their job, right? When I work with people, I always tell them, hey, I get stuff. It doesn't mean it's absolutely true. It just means I got it. So I'm going to share it. Your job is to go, eat the fish, spit out the bones, take what works for you, leave the rest. Are you willing to do that? And from that point forward, when they say yes, we have a partnership, an agreement where I can be free to share whatever I get, whether it's a body sensation, a vision, a message, a sense of something, right? And I'm doing that dance where I'm in relationship with you. I'm staying attuned to my guidance. I'm feeling into my client's market and what that market is craving, and putting it all together. A lot of my work is around messaging and packaging to help understand, how do we frame the conversation of this work in the marketplace. But I need that agreement and partnership with a client to be fully transparent about whatever I get. And sometimes, man, it comes through and it feels super, super odd. Like, am I really going to say this? And That's the courage piece. All right. Yep. Yep. This is what I'm getting. So I'm just going to blurt it. And then the person that I'm with can do what they do with it. I'm going to give you a very quick little story of this, because I think it's important for people to get, like, how does this really work? When I moved to Los Angeles, I moved in with a colleague, but I'd only met her once, like a month earlier. So it was a colleague that I did not really know. And she had a little salon the first weekend I was there, and everybody had a little time kind of in the spotlight and could ask questions. And the group that was there was giving them, insights that they were receiving, blah, blah, blah. She was in the hot seat, and she was talking about her singing voice and wanting some support around that and trying to figure out where she was blocked around it. And I kept getting this message: she needs to sing from her vagina. Now, I don't know this lady, and I just moved into her house. I'm not going to go anywhere at the end of the night. I'm going to stay there. And I'm sitting there, am I really going to say this? I don't know this lady, right? Like, that's super intimate. But I've practiced being courageous and blurting. So I just I don't know where this is coming from, but here's what I'm getting. And she said, oh my God, that's what I needed to hear. I used to work with a singing teacher who taught me to sing from my power center, from my vagina. I've not been connected to that at all. That's exactly what I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. How could I have ever known that?
Yeah.
But it was my job to deliver the message that I was hearing. That's it. And that's the courageous piece, not hesitation, not manipulation, not control, just share it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I like what you said. It's your job to deliver it. And that's that's the position to put ourselves in. It's like, who are we to not deliver it? Who are we to say no to delivering that?
And who are we to say we need to be sure that it's going to land for them? How will you ever know? That's not your job. So many people, when they're like, I don't feel safe sharing this because I don't know if it's true. And I'm like, that's not your job to know if it's true. You got it. And yes, do you have filters because you have a personality? You do. And did you get the message? You did. So deliver it and let the other person. Here's my favorite language. I deliver something and say, did that land for you? What did you get out of that? And I'll check it out with them. And sometimes they'll go, yeah, absolutely. Here's what I got. And they'll give me their interpretation. Every now and again, somebody would be like, that didn't really land. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Well, and we go in another direction, or I'll ask them another question. Big deal. It didn't land, right? That like the sky didn't fall. Everybody's okay. That concern of like, is it accurate? I want to really encourage people to give that up. And the second piece, and I'll try to make this brief.
Okay.
One of the foundational things around power and leadership for me is this, and this is the ego piece we were talking about earlier. Is there something I'm trying to prove by having success in the world? So, in my work, the core wound work is a identity belief at the foundation of our psyche's makeup. I am, right? I am a worthless piece of crap. I'm an unlovable nothing. I'm whatever it is. And we all have these places where we hold these beliefs about ourselves that are contrary to our soul's truth, right? To make sense of the experiences we had that were wounding. But then what we do is the ego takes them and says, okay, we can find a way to do something externally out in the world to disprove the belief I hold about myself internally. And this is the drive for so much ambition and our yearning for success is there is, and of course it's a mirage, like where is the end point? For me, it was about being a somebody.
Mhm.
I really needed to be a somebody. And it wasn't until like maybe a year ago, my business manager, I have a podcast, and I had some really accomplished, amazing people on it. And I'm like, they said yes to being on it, you know? And she's like, why are you surprised? And I'm like, well, they're kind of a somebody. And she's like, what does that make you? "Oh, nobody." And then the place that it got even more like sickening to me was seeing where I'm the somebody and I had to turn others into nobodies, needing me, right?
Yep.
But,
Yep.
you know, uh, did I actually have any destination that would have proved I am now a somebody? Some level of success, some level of reach, you know, New York Times bestselling book, like what are the metrics that will have proved it? Of course they aren't there, because that's the game of the ego, right?
Mm.
And so around this power thing, I think a foundational piece to look at is, am I striving for success to prove something externally because there's something I can't be with internally?
Mm.
Is it wound driven fuel, or am I at peace with myself internally? And am I moving something forward out of desire and purpose? A very different kind of fuel, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's what I call regenerative energy. It's like wind or solar. Whereas the wound energy, it's powerful. You can do a lot of stuff with it, but like nuclear reactors, it's reactive energy. Can't touch the hot potato, can't touch that thing inside of myself. And it's driving me out into the world. But like nuclear power, it has spent fuel rods, right? Has a byproduct that's really harmful. And so the journey of moving through our wound more deeply into our own soul's desire and using that to fuel our purpose in the world, I think is one of the foundational quests for people that are really engaged in having their mission drive their life.
Yeah. And that is also when we were talking in the past about, the having power as opposed to being power, that's also that transition. You're being power when you're in alignment with your purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jeffrey. It's been so lovely to talk to you. How can our audience get in touch with you if they're interested in working with you or knowing more about what you offer?
Thecourageousmessenger.com is my website, thecourageousmessenger.com. On that page, there's a really deep, intensive download called Sharing Your Unique Genius with the World, which is about finding that 1 square inch you can drill a mile deep in the marketplace that really has your genius shine. So that's a great next step. Facebook, we have a Facebook group, The Courageous Messenger, and I do a message there every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Pacific. Podcast, The Jeffrey Van Dyke Show, wherever you get podcasts. And I have a new album I just released called You Belong.
Yes. Yeah.
So wherever you stream music, you can type in Jeffrey Van Dyke, You Belong, and find the album there. So those are a few different places.
Lovely. So for the audience, a few extra pieces, because of course what your bio didn't say was about your music training and the music side of your work. There was that. And also I liked what you just said. I've absolutely loved it. And of course, I've been a client of yours too, about the finding your 1 square inch of space. So I'd certainly encourage the audience to, check out those resources and, listen in on all the things that you give out so that they learn more about that. So thank you so much, Jeffrey. It's been an absolute delight.
Been my pleasure, my dear. All my love. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.